Hello, it's Rafael Gutierrez, and welcome to my channel. Now, today I've actually had a hard time trying to put this together in a rational manner to try to say everything I wanted to say. So I actually decided instead I'm going to break this into a couple different parts. The first one being what's happening right now. One of the things that happened recently is the Shurijo castle, which you can see behind me. It burnt down. It was a hard hit for anyone who does Okinawan Karate, and was a hit to anyone who lives in Okinawa, as it is pretty much a cultural icon. And there were actually a lot of artifacts there that were also lost during the fire. I know that a lot of martial artists, a lot of karateka, wanted to do anything we can to help, and I was one of them. And what I did is I called one of my friends who lives in Okinawa and asked, is there anything we can do to help? What they told me is the Okinawan prefecture and the Japanese government are going to try to rebuild this structure. And they told me if we want to help, wait until either the Okinawan prefecture or the Japanese government sets up a site where we can contribute, help out any way we can. And so that's what I'm going to do. I figure the Okinawan prefecture is where the castle is. The Japanese government knows what they need to do. And so I'm going to wait until they tell me what they need. And with that, I'm hoping that eventually we'll be able to see the Shurijo again, hopefully as soon as possible. The other thing I actually was going to talk about is I ended up coming across a site called fighterstales.wordpress.com, and it's actually being done by a young woman named Lorraine Hoff, who's trying to interview women who are in martial arts. For me, a man who teaches martial arts, I think this is something very important for us. And the reason is that as a man, I'm always trying to teach my kids the stories of the martial artists that came before us. And usually I end up talking about the same two martial artists. One of them is Yonamini, who most of you may know that was married to Matsumura, one of the first Okinawan women martial artists that people recognize the name. The other was a British woman named Edith Margaret Garud, who was a pinnacle in helping start the women's suffrage movement. She actually, even though she was 5 feet tall, less than 5 feet tall is what I've read, she was feared by a lot of the thugs who were against women's suffrage. If you read the stories of women's suffrage, you read about how a lot of people would go and beat up women because they wanted a right to vote, among other rights that people now take for granted. Edith Margaret Garud, being a small woman, terrified a lot of these savages, and so she actually is someone who in martial arts, I actually like my students, the little girls I teach anyways, to know about her. And so I'm hoping that this Fighter S Tales gets going and we can see how martial arts has affected other women. I will mention another woman I've talked to who decided to take martial art at an older age, and she had told me that when she started martial arts, she ended up running into a lot of problems with people actually telling her, oh no, this is a tough man's sport. There's no place for women. And a lot of women who have actually made a name for themselves in martial arts had to go through that, had to actually fight the idea of, no, you have to be a tough man who takes hits to the head to be a martial artist. They found that just like Edith Margaret Garud, you can be a small woman and learn the techniques to do what you want to do with whatever your martial art is. Now, when you're looking for, I actually wanted to talk mostly about how to find an instructor and how to figure out if your instructor is qualified to teach what they're teaching. Now, a lot of people do the lazy man's thing, which they look, oh, this gentleman has a 10th degree black belt, he must be great. And there are some great 10th degrees. I mean, obviously, they're 10th degree. But 10th degree itself doesn't necessarily mean anything. Sometimes I've met some people who are self-promoted 10th degrees, and they made their own art, so they're 10th degree as far as they know. That's it. There are others who are extremely old, 80, yet you look at them and you realize why they have a 10th degree. They can punch harder than me. kick harder than most people. They can do a lot more than someone not even half their age, someone a third their age. And so that's actually one of the big things. Now, a lot of us don't realize what we know or don't know. And there's a scale that's actually kind of funny. It shows you the level of competence versus how sure you are of what you can do. And the people who usually have the least competence are usually the most confident. And then when they start getting experience, they start realizing, no, their level of understanding is really low. And so it shoots down. And slowly, as they get more and more experience, it progresses going back up. And to just point out how it works, I'm actually going to quote a book, Your Inner Fish. Now, I teach anatomy a lot of times, and Your Inner Fish is a book that I actually like. It's pretty much a gentleman teaching how the human body developed using the fossil records. Now, there are some people who don't believe in evolution. It doesn't matter because we can still see the progression, and we can use the progression of the fossil record as it mirrors embryology to see how pretty much how different medical conditions have actually occurred because of changes in or reversions in how things develop. Now, I'm only going to read a little bit of the preface just to show you one of the important things, and that is, on account of faculty departures, I ended up directing the human anatomy course at the medical school of the University of Chicago. Now, anatomy, he actually goes on to say anatomy is the first course most medical students take, and it's actually where they're going to do dissection. He then actually ends up saying, at first glance, you couldn't have imagined a worse candidate for the job of training the next generation of doctors. I am a paleontologist who spent most of his career working on fish. And then he says, it turns out it was a huge advantage in teaching human anatomy. This is one person who didn't realize that they had a background for teaching a class they did until they started teaching it. He probably did a lot more work. It probably wasn't just, showing up to class, reading the book right before the medical student did, and lecturing based on what I read. This is a person who actually had an understanding of the fossil record, how things developed, and it probably helped him in embryology, which then he was able to talk about how different conditions ended up happening. But there's a lot of people out there who will actually take certain classes, like let's say anatomy, and say, oh, well, anatomy is just straight memorization. I can teach people to memorize. Look, I'm giving you a list. This is the ulna. Know the ulna. This is the radius. This is the radius. And it makes for a really dry and boring class. In martial arts, you will actually have people who don't know the level of their expertise. For instance, some people may teach throws and have never stepped foot in a martial arts studio which actually trains just with throws. If you're one of the people who's learned a little throws and you go to even a seminar held by a judoka, you will realize how much skill goes into a basic throw. I mean, you can actually do one throw for an entire week and still not know everything you need to know about it to make it effective. If you take any of the joint lock, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you try to learn one lock, a lot of times it takes a long time to actually learn how to do that lock properly. Yes, there are people who say, oh, you just go and try, and you do a trial by error, but one of the things you'll notice is if you really want to get good at locks, you have to train, practice, and understand what you're doing. Human anatomy is one of those classes that do help you understand what you're doing to the body and why sometimes as you're doing it, you have to learn to tap out. So, how do you find the right instructor for you? Well, it depends on your level. What I mean by that is this. Let's say you're beginning. You just put on a gi, put on your white belt, and you're going to go to a class. One of the first things I tell people to do is look at what the other belts are doing. Now, I'm going to just use the white, green, brown, black scenario for this because it's easy. So let's do 4 levels. So if you're a white belt and you've never done a class before, and your goal is to get to the green belt, the nice thing with rank is you can actually look at the green belts and you can ask them to help you get to their level. And a green belt should be able to help you reach the green belt level. It may not be right away, it may take a lot of time, but he's going to be able to teach you what he knows to get to where he is. Now, once you get to green belt, you would end up wanting to look at what the brown belts are doing and try to see if they can help you reach. And one of the things I have actually noticed is some of the students who advance the fastest are people who had actually talked to the students who are a little higher rank, met with them, and learned what they actually knew. I mean, you think about it. If you only have one teacher, you can actually only train when that teacher is available. If you're able to get different people to help you, you can help yourself move up. Now, there is so much more to teaching and learning than just, hey, this is the basics, you got your green belt. And so what if you're a brown belt and you're trying to find a new dojo because you moved? Well, the biggest thing I would tell you to do is visit different dojos, look at what people are doing, and see if people are moving in a way which is what you want to do. For instance, let's say you go to a school and you see that the brown belts are punching harder than you, if you're a brown belt. Well, that might be a good school to go to if you want a hard hit. If that's what they specialize, that'd be a great school. What if you're interested in eventually going to the Olympics in karate, which this year we all know Okinawa, the karate is going to go. Well, you want to go to people who actually are going to the Olympics, so you can actually learn what they're going to try to find out how to say it, so you can understand what the Olympic committees are actually going to be looking at. So again, one of the things with learning is it depends on what you're actually after. You have to find the right teacher, but you have to look at who your teacher is. In academia, it might be a little harder because a lot of times you may not be able to choose your professor. You can Google them and see if they are qualified. The school pretty much is saying that they're qualified, so that you can actually just sometimes rely on that. But if you want to know more, you can do that. For instance, if you want someone who's teaching anatomy who, does nursing, did they work in the nursing field? And that would actually be able to help you get a better class. I hope this makes sense and you enjoy it. If there's any questions, please write them down. If there's anything you would want me to research and put it on the website, please let me know. I'll do the best I can. And as I find out more about the Fighterist Tales, I'll let you guys know. Hope you enjoy this and have a nice day.